Okay, this may sound a little wild and fanciful to you, but if we go by the Bible, and most religious people do, or people that claim to be godly, I don't like to use that term religious because it denotes in these days a church and teachings and doctrine and therefore falsehood. So, I don't know what other word to use, but we'll find one. So, in the scriptures that we use to determine the details of how God treats us and why things are going a certain way, and of course what the future is. Most people think of the Bible as a history book, but everything in it has to do with the future and details about that future. In fact, almost all of the scriptures that we considered fulfilled are not. There was a tiny fulfillment of them in ancient times, but they were written for our day. We'll get more into that as time goes on. The suffering question. It is an enduring question, and I haven't heard very many satisfactory answers for it. But there is answers in the scriptures. Firstly, you need to believe the scriptures and believe God, what He says. So here it goes. There is a 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ in the Bible. And it is a time when wickedness will be wiped off the earth. Oh, that's a religious term. Okay, let's say the people who hurt others, or the people that don't love others, or the people that don't support others, financially, educationally, and every other way. Every one of them will be removed from the planet. That sounds crazy, but that's what the scriptures say. And that's the only way to have a beautiful place to live. The only way. And if there is a God and He created the universe and all its billions of planets and galaxies, then this God surely has the power to select those who are corrupting the earth and remove them. For Him, it's like an afternoon walk or a nap. Simple as pie. So yes, it's going to be done. So this 1,000-year reign of Christ, it says there's a resurrection. That means a bringing back to life. So those who are dead will come back. In fact, it says in the Bible that any who are dead to God are only sleeping. So this death that we speak about or talk about, to God is no death at all. It is simply sleeping. A good long rest, which some of us would thoroughly enjoy. Not necessarily death, but the rest part. So, on that basis, there is this 1,000-year reign of Christ, where He will rule, and He has helpers that rule with Him. The scriptures mention 144,000 on earth, and a group that are in the heaven that He selected from earth in the first century. He handpicked them to rule with Him, which is very nice, to have people that you love and people that you've selected working with you to care for the planet, and maybe thousands of other planets. We'll get into that as time goes on. So this 1,000-year rule has two resurrections, one at the beginning and one toward the end. The one at the beginning is the resurrection of those who found favor with God or who did good, those who loved their neighbor, those who didn't rip off their neighbor, those who cared for the poor, those who didn't gossip and slander others. Good guys. You know who they are, because the ones that I described you would like to have as your neighbor, especially if you're poor. So there's that resurrection at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, so that their blessing or their privilege or their reward for being a good guy, not perfect, because there is no perfect man, just someone who tries to do good fails in many ways, but someone who tries to do good. Okay, so now their blessing or their reward or their benefit from God is that they get to have children. Dozens of children, because there's no dying during the 1,000-year reign. We are granted everlasting life. And that's not so difficult for God. It's basically changing a couple of genes in the DNA, and that's it. Scientists figure they're almost there now. So for God to do it, that's as easy as pie. So, these people, their blessing for being good is that they get to have hundreds of children, thousands of grandchildren, and by the end of the 1,000 years, who knows how many grandchildren they have, and great-grandchildren, and so on and so on. At the end of the 1,000 years, that's when the second resurrection takes place. That's those who rebelled against God, those who didn't love their neighbor and ripped him off or raped him or did whatever. In Isaiah, there's an indication that it would be approximately 100 years before the 1,000 years ends that the second resurrection would take place. And that makes sense because everybody at the end of the 1,000 years, now here's another religiously babbling sounding thing, but Satan, and if you believe the Bible and if you believe in God, then there's a Satan, is let out of his prison that he's in for 1,000 years so that he can't disrupt and disturb us. He is given a chance to sift out or refine any who still have wicked and selfish thinking inside their mind or heart. So, to make a perfect decision on this last and final test or judgment, we would all need to be perfect. Everyone who's a good guy and everyone who was a bad guy. So at the end of this 1,000 years, this test happens. Satan comes out of prison and he is allowed to mislead and divert the attention of whomever he wishes. It doesn't need to be a long time because God just needs to see who still has that seed of hatred or greed in its heart. And then that population is eradicated from the planet, never to exist again, no more resurrections, completely erased from memory. Because they were given every opportunity. So, you would probably prefer the first resurrection. But let's say you were involved in the second one. Okay, if your life was wonderful and you had lots of money and you played and did anything you wanted, had servants, whatever it was, and then you died, because that's what we do. But you say you got the second resurrection of the wicked because you had all that money and didn't share it with anybody who is poor, nor give any concern for the destitute people that are on this planet. So then Satan gets out and he makes it so that whoever wants to can have more power than they've ever had, who can enslave other people, corrupt them, have servants, make tons of cash. Even though there won't be a monetary system at that time, they can develop one quite easily so that one can raise above the other. So, since God is a loving God and wants to save everybody, he does not want one person to be diverted from a course of goodness. So, if your life now is horrendous, like absolutely catastrophic, depression, rape, beatings, torture, whatever it may be, then you die and get resurrected. Would you prefer to go back to Satan's world? Would you possibly select to go back into this corrupt arrangement that we have today? What is the likelihood of that? if your life was absolute horror and terror? Probably unlikely. That's the point. God wants to save you. If you're a good guy and you get resurrected at the beginning of the 1,000 years, there is no more test for you. You are given life, permanent. No judgment at the end, nothing. You're done. But if you were a bad guy, then the suffering that you endure is to train you to make a proper decision next time. There is no part of God's fabric in any way, shape, and form that wants you to die permanently. He created us. He wants us all to live. So if the beatings, or if the rape, or if the suffering, or if the mutilation, or if the being wheeled around in a wheelchair, or the gagging because you can't breathe is something that may convert you, then that will be the best thing that has ever happened to you, ever. This time that we have now, though it may be horrendous and painful for some of us, is such a short amount when you look at the time of forever, or even of 1,000 years. Say we live now 50 with grief and horror and then die. That's 1/20th of the 1,000 years, and then millions of years after that. It is such a short time, it's but a breath. So embrace it. It is gruesome and it is terrible. I know depression, severe depression for 40 years. Suicidal for 15. Straight. So grief is not unfamiliar to me. However, the benefit that will come in our life being saved far outweighs what we may have suffered now. And if you do not understand that, then keep listening, because I'll likely touch on it more. But the point is to save our life. Almost everyone on this planet agrees that discipline in some way, many prefer corporal punishment, and believe me, it works. That is corporal punishment, the suffering that some of us will endure. God knows it works. That's why He has allowed it. So know that God has allowed suffering to save your life, because your life is precious to Him. Even if you're a wicked guy or a wicked woman, He wants you to change. And if you're not going to change now, He wants you to change then. We all get another chance to be a good guy or a good person. We all get that second chance. So if you don't change now, then hopefully you will change then. And that is the whole point of allowing us to suffer, that we will make the right decision. And according to the scriptures, billions will make the wrong decision. And He already knows that. So that's the point. He knows our human nature. Not just human nature, the angels have chosen the same things, some of them. But He does not want that, and that's the point. So embrace it. Try to smile if you possibly can. And know that it is because God wants to save your life. And He wants to make sure that you never make that decision to go the other way when you're given a second chance, when we all get our second chance. Thank you for listening, folks. This is a voice calling in the desert, saying to all who are explaining God in some way or form, make the way straight. Make it simple, make it understandable. Take that corruption out of it. Make it something that people can actually do and feel good about themselves doing. Not religious ritual. That has nothing to do with serving God. As we found out, pure religion from the standpoint of God is looking after those who are destitute in any way, financially, emotionally, mentally, any way. That is our responsibility. And that is how we can assure ourselves a place in the first resurrection. Thank you very much for listening, folks, and have a wonderful day.